Okay everyone, I am using a new microphone for this video. This is the Rode NT USB Plus, which is a lovely microphone, feels very premium, and it even glows in the dark, which is pretty cool. So let me know what you all think about the audio quality of my commentary here. Your feedback would be very much appreciated. And with that, let's talk about Call of Duty 3, a game where I've been very vocal about disliking, and my first official Call of Duty game I've ever played. Let me first take you back to the spring of 2008. It was about 5 or 6 months ago since I got my PlayStation 3 as a Christmas gift in 2007, and Blockbuster Video was still around, and there was one right down the street from my house. So I had gone with my dad to pick out a few movies to watch over the course of the week, and while there, he had asked me if I wanted to pick out a game to play as well. Now, my parents, and more so my dad, were very educated when it came to the rating system of games, and it was his opinion that he did not want my 13-year-old self experiencing any M-rated games at the time. He felt that I was too young. So I was just finishing up my first semester of high school, and everyone there was talking about how amazing Call of Duty 4 was and how it took the series to the next level, and subsequently the series ESRB rating as well. So I knew that asking my dad to rent Call of Duty 4 would end up being a straight no response, so I didn't even attempt that. But Call of Duty 3 caught my eye on the shelf, and me not knowing any better, I was like, hey, it's only last year's game. It can't be that different, right? Oh god. From the moment I put the disc into my PS3, I knew something fell off. The game looked, well, just bad, and especially because at the time I was busy playing Uncharted Drake's Fortune for like the 4th freaking time. And the PS3 I got was the MotorStorm bundle, the 80GB version. So I had like all these next-gen incredible looking games, and my eyes, when they saw Call of Duty 3, were like, this game just turned my PS3 into a PS2. What is this? I mean, to be honest, I'm exaggerating a bit. It didn't look awful, but it was a noticeable step down from the exclusive, albeit few games I had been accustomed to at the time. But then the problems persisted. The controls started feeling sluggish and poor, unresponsive, and I wasn't knowledgeable much about frame rate at the time. I mean, I was 13 years old and I just wanted to enjoy the game, but these days, you know, it's easy to find out why this was the case, because Call of Duty 3 is a infamous poor performer on PS3, running at times slightly above 30 frames per second, but never hitting that 60 FPS target. So the game looked dated, the controls felt poor, and the frame rate was spazzing out everywhere. Then all the glitches came. I saw enemies being frozen in place, they got stuck on walls. Sometimes I would pick up a weapon and not be able to fire the weapon or not even be able to equip it. And it was just piling on and fucking on at this point. And this was just my initial 2 hours with the game. So me being an impatient young boy at the time, I was just like, this is terrible. I never want to play Call of Duty again. Dad, take me back to Blockbuster so I can get something else. And yeah, that was my initial experience when it came to Call of Duty 3, and I just started shaking my head whenever I heard people praise the series. I just didn't know what the hell they were talking about. So while we're here, let's take a short little break and look at the box art for Call of Duty 3 on the Xbox 360. We have a fairly generic cover here. There's the spine, and then on the back it says, brings you closer than ever to the fury of combat. Yeah, so I mean, it's some cool art and stuff like that. I just don't think that the front cover looks particularly as, well, interesting as Call of Duty 2's. Let's see what the game disc is like. Same thing as the basic front cover there. Nice detail on the disc. Happy to get a clean copy of this game. And the manual, because we did get manuals back then. Nice ad for Tony Hawk's Project 8. And then we open this up and you can see contents, controls, single player stuff. Here's a look at the in-game display menu. Different information about controls. Nice to have a manual, even though it is black and white. Hey, it's multiple pages and a hell of a lot more than what you get today. So, nice look at the Call of Duty 3 box art. So let's fast forward now to the present day, or in reality, late 2021, when I recorded this game and replayed it on Series X. Now, After all this time, I had hoped I could finally take a look at this game with an objective eye and to actually see if I had simply no taste back then, or perhaps I wasn't so far off. So I was actually very excited to see what this game was going to be like all these years later. Now, what we're watching here is the Xbox 360 version of the game running backwards compatible on the Series X. And while it was true that back in late 2006 when this game launched, it was already well known that the Xbox version was far superior and ran smoother than anything that the PS3 provided. Keep in mind that this was also a launch game on the PS3, so when you got your $600 PlayStation 3 expecting this top tier game experience, then seeing that the competitor's $500 console, in fact I think it was discounted and even cheaper at the time, I think it was like $450 or $400, you could get this game and actually have it look and run better than the PS3 version. That was really frustrating. But to be honest, there were still some dips on the Xbox 360 code, and the performance was never really solid in this title. Now, the Series X, thankfully, delivers the true optimized and smooth experience you would come to expect from the Call of Duty games today. This game runs without any issues, and the Series X does the best it can do at upscaling the 720p resolution to the 4K TV. And with now having a much more familiar sense of this series, along with me also playing and very much enjoying this game's much better predecessor, Call of Duty 2, is Call of Duty 3 now a better entry in this franchise? Well, yeah, but not a whole lot. You see, while this game does run smoother, plays better, and looks nicer, the quality and the creativity of the game still show glaring issues. Now we have the advantage of time, and with time comes knowledge and details that we didn't really know about back then. So this means that we're able to sort of take a look at this game with some new details and kind of understand why these issues persisted. Now the game is still glitchy. In fact, during my playthrough of this game, I had unfortunately experienced a handful of glitches related to the same issues that I experienced back in, 2008. Stuck enemies, guns not properly being equipped when picking up, and many annoyances and little small things like that. So all of this hilariously sounds like commonplace modern gaming today, but back then you have to keep in mind that it was a bit bizarre because you would expect games to not be as glitchy because patches, while yes were available during this time, were still relatively new for the industry and it wasn't so relied on heavily like they are today. But the real reason behind this entire mess is due to the game's development time. Now, this may shock you if you didn't know it already, but Treyarch has since come out and talked about this game, and they had to create this game in a staggering 8-month development time. Yeah, I can't even begin to recall when I heard a developer was given this short of notice to create a new game. And you have to keep in mind as well that Treyarch at the time had only ever worked on expansions and DLC content for the previous Call of Duty games. They had never worked on a full-fledged title, so they were just thrown the responsibility of creating a new complete Call of Duty game with less than a year of development time. Oh, and to add further insult, they also had to ship this game on current and last-gen consoles, the PS2, the original Xbox. So with this now brought into the light, let's be honest, it's a fucking miracle the game is even decent. I mean, it's a bad game, right? It's poor, it has huge issues, it's buggy all these years later, still after all this time. But I've played worse than this, and I've played irredeemable games that truly have no business being released the way that they were. And with this newfound knowledge in tow, I do now have a certain respect for this game now, even though it's still quite poor, and when comparing it to Call of Duty 2, it doesn't even feel like it's on the same level. But Treyarch was literally just thrusted into this mess, and these guys would later go on to redeem themselves with their next Call of Duty title, World at War, which basically corrected just about every issue with the game. So in this way, Call of Duty 3 is like this interesting story of redemption and a studio maturing into a better and much more organized game developer today. And that's just cool to hear. I definitely find myself enjoying a lot of the Treyarch games today. Well, most of them, to be honest. But yeah, Call of Duty 3, all these years later, it's a bit sad, but also kind of a miracle. Microsoft's backwards compatibility program thankfully helps resolve the technical miscomings of this entry, and it leaves it with only the poor and rushed creative decisions to be judged by. But Activision back then was, well, still a shitty company, and you can tell that they were trying to sort of organize a competent release schedule for the Call of Duty franchise in the future. But you also have to understand that, back then, Call of Duty was not this annual franchise like it was today. Call of Duty came out in 2003, there was a year wait, and then Call of Duty 2 in 2005, and then there was this game coming out in the next year. They were just starting to make these decisions. So now the series is owned by Microsoft, and we really have to wait and see how this turns out. I see a lot of people oddly blaming Microsoft for the misfortunes of Modern Warfare 3. Which is hilarious because the acquisition went through literally a month before the game was released, and somehow people think Microsoft ruined Modern Warfare 3 in a month. I don't know how that works. It's just a very internet thing for humanity to put out. But in all seriousness, I do hope that next year's entry is getting a much better managerial oversight from Microsoft, and we can hopefully take a short break from Call of Duty in the somewhat near future, but that might be wishful thinking. But I do want to mention that I do think today's Call of Duty games are turning into a completely different entity. It's like it's not a game anymore, it's a platform. And unfortunately, we may never see a Call of Duty subtitled Warfare, release. It's just going to be an email going out saying Call of Duty has been updated. And I don't like that, I have to keep reminding myself to look at the franchise as sort of the Madden and FIFA version of the first-person shooter. Like, it didn't used to be that way, right? But that's what it's becoming. It's a yearly sports game churned out with minimal effort and a campaign to keep people like me hanging out, hoping for the future. But this is unfortunate because some of my favorite shooter campaigns were from the Call of Duty series, and the series is really responsible for some of the best multiplayer experiences I've ever had. So I just hope that there's something for people like myself as the series matures into the next decade. So yeah, Call of Duty 3 is just interesting by today's standards. I still don't enjoy it. I still think it's quite poor, and after now playing Call of Duty 2 and going back to play this game, it's a huge difference when it comes to just the quality level of the game. But now we understand why, that it honestly isn't all of Treyarch's fault. It's just Activision, again, with their meddling. And I just can't believe that they really tried to get, 8 months of development time to create a brand new entry. They really tried to do that. And it's just a miracle that you're seeing the game, it's not like it's a multiplayer only project. This is a campaign with multiplayer. It's effectively a full-scale Call of Duty game. And yet you have to give it some respect, even though, it's still not where it should be, anywhere. You have to give it some respect that they are able to actually create this in such a short time span. It's just insane. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this reminiscing video. If you played Call of Duty 3, I would love to hear your thoughts, especially if you played it back when it was relevant. Again, by today's standards, you can play this on Series X and it takes care of basically all of the performance issues. And if you play this on PS3, God help you, because the frame rate is just absurd. It's not anywhere near the smoothness of what you would expect the Call of Duty games to offer. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Hope you guys enjoyed this reminiscing video. Please let me know what you guys think about the audio quality of my commentary as I'm testing out a new microphone here. I would very much appreciate that, and we'll talk later. Thank you guys.